You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside the whole gang, back together again. Mike Chappell, Matt Adams. I'm Dave Griffiths. Sure appreciate you joining us here as we continue on into the offseason. And it is NFC, AFC Championship week in the NFL as the Eagles and the Commanders, the NFC Beast, battles for the NFC spot in the Super Bowl, and in the AFC, it is who you would expect. Number one, number two, it's the quarterbacks. It's Patrick Mahomes. It's Josh Allen. Before them, it was C.J. Stroud and Lamar Jackson that made the Final Four. What do you know, Chap? The best quarterbacks in the AFC, which has the best quarterbacks in the league overall, are going to be are the ones that you have to get through to make the Super Bowl.
If you got the guy, you've got a chance. If you don't have a chance.
Exactly.
This is as much as we try to complicate things, and we'll get into with the Colts' new DC. It boils down to, do you have the guys at the right spots? This is a league that's about, are your top six players better than their top six players? I know, is your quarterback capable of doing it? So, whenever we get to this point, the Final Four, it just drives home the fact that you feel left out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
the Colts aren't there, and you want to get back to being relevant. And until they do, everything else is just window dressing. So we'll see where this goes.
Of course, the last time your Indianapolis Colts made the AFC Championship game was the last time they won the division, way back in the 2014 season when they made that run to the AFC Championship and lost, I believe it was to the Patriots, because it was always to the Patriots when you lost in that point.
And also 2 days ago was the 18-year anniversary of the Colts beating the Patriots.
Oh, yeah, the comeback, yeah.
The comeback. And that just drives home, it's been that long ago.
It's been that long. Yep.
So that's why, again, it's whenever you see teams, the Rams or somebody, that they just go sort of all in, and they do heavy stuff with Stafford and free agents. And if you get there and if you win it, maybe if you just get there, but if you win it, it just buys you time to not get there a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Kevin Bowen had a really good stat, and I haven't gotten in front of me, about the last time, since the Colts last won the division, how many teams have won a division? It's like 26 or 27 teams.
Right.
And since they last won a game, it's been so. That's what this has all got to be about, and it starts with the defense, which we'll get to. But it just, whenever other teams are playing and the team that you cover is not, you just think, boy, that was really cool when they were still playing.
Right. Yeah, we're going to focus quite a bit on defense for this podcast, and understandably so, because that's where the news of the week is coming with the Colts. But we will touch on Anthony Richardson a little bit, some news with him this week. One of the Colts captains who may or may not be with the team next year, getting some recognition from the NFL. A rookie as well, getting some recognition from the NFL. But we will start on the defensive side of the ball, as the Colts have a replacement for Gus Bradley as defensive coordinator, announcing the hire of former Bengals DC Lou Anarumo to the same position here in Indianapolis. Anarumo was the defensive coordinator for the Bengals from 2019 to 2014. He was fired after this past season, which was a disappointment in Cincinnati, as their struggles to start the year overcame their strength to end the year and did not quite make the playoffs. Would have been a dangerous, scary team in the playoffs. But if you have Joe Burrow, who has an ungodly season himself, and Jamar Chase, who has an ungodly season on offense, and the defense wasn't good enough to get them into the playoffs because they made mistakes early. They had injuries to that side of the ball as well. I know Joe Burrow went to bat for Anarumo with the brass, the decision makers at hand in Cincinnati. But it wasn't enough to.
They had to do something.
Exactly, they had to do something. You couldn't. Well, some other front offices and owners around the league might not do anything, Chap.
Right. So, well, or the one like locally did something.
Right.
Sort of along the same lines.
Kind of.
You can't use the same rationale.
Right.
But there's always got it. Especially when you've got Burrow and Chase said it. One led the league in. I don't know if Burrow led the league in touchdown passes, but in yards.
Yep.
And did Jamar Chase win the triple crown?
Yes, he did.
That happens like 4 times, ever.
Yeah.
And you still don't make the playoffs, and they're always getting beat 38, 34, whatever. something's got to change. So, them getting rid of Lou sort of helps the Colts. And what's really going to be interesting, and I'm sorry, I've not read the outline, but what's going to be really interesting is, and maybe it'll be brought up tomorrow when we talk to Lou at 9:00 in the morning, is the uncertainty of the people above him with Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. I mean, that's a dicey situation to enter into, and I don't know how you mention it to him. I mean, there's only 32 of these jobs, and you're going to grab them. So, but this is a different situation he's coming into.
It's interesting there, and I think that's a completely worthwhile point to break down a little bit, because his future in Indianapolis could very well revolve around the performance of Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson,
regardless of how his defense plays.
Exactly. Right. Like he could improve this defense from whatever it was at the end of this year in the mid-20s in the rankings, in yards and points, to the mid-teens.
Right.
And he could still be fired at the end of this year because if Shane Steichen is gone,
the rest of the team didn't get it done.
Exactly. If the offense doesn't get it done, Shane Steichen could be out of here, along with Anthony Richardson, as they try to wipe the slate clean again.
And the GM.
And the GM's gone, so a new head coach comes in and a new plan on defense. But I think from his perspective, like maybe there are enough pieces here that make it intriguing, and if he's fired at the end of next year, he could show that he still improved it, and he will be a name that is
still hot on he's still
sought
after.
So yeah, like you said, Chap, like there's only one of 32. There's only 32 jobs like this, but if he can take what is in Indianapolis and make it better, even if he's fired, he will still be sought after.
People see.
So it's not dire for him.
Oh, not at all. It's just awkward. Where
it is awkward. That's a better description.
But again, people in the league, it's kind of like if you're an All-American level receiver at Alcorn State, they're going to find you.
Mm-hmm.
They know who you are, and if you're a top coordinator or special teams guy or whatever, they know you. But people in the league know you, and you network. So I don't mean to just throw water on this. I'm just saying. But again, having said that, if he has any kind of success, whatever we want to grade success as next year, people notice, and he's networked, and people know him. So it's not a dire situation. It's an awkward situation.
What Anarumo's past is in the NFL, along with being a defensive coordinator, specifically with defensive backs.
Yeah, I think that's really key.
Yeah, that's where he has kind of made his money over the years. He's been DB's coach for the Dolphins, for the Giants, was interim defensive coordinator with the Dolphins when he was there under then head coach Dan Campbell back in the day.
Yeah, when he was an interim for the Dolphins there.
Right. What a long time ago. Anarumo coached on the college level for 23 years, was including that a defensive backs coach under Joe Tiller at Purdue during some of those
those were great
2000
teams.
years.
And they had some tremendous defensive backs during that time.
So if he could come in and start coaching, there's a lot of young defensive backs to be coached. And Chris Ballard has talked about that until he's been blue in the face. Like, we like our guys. We like our guys. And I know fans, a lot of them hate hearing that. Like, we like our guys, but maybe that's part of the reason why he could be attracted, Chris Ballard. I know Ballard said that this would be a Shane Steichen decision when we spoke to him after the season.
Right.
But this is I think that's a one in the win column, a check mark from Ballard's perspective that, hey, you're bringing in a defensive coordinator who has a strong history coaching defensive backs, and he continues to say we like our defensive backs.
But you can like your own guys. But that doesn't preclude you from bringing in some other guys.
Right. Completely.
And I think that's one of the areas that they've really failed the last couple of years. It's great to believe in Juju Brents and Jalen Jones and all these guys, but doggone, when the depth chart cries out for a Stephon Gilmore type, Xavier Rhodes type, and you don't do it, then that's on you guys. That's on you.
Uh-huh.
And I just, again, we'll have many a podcast to talk about this, but that has to be the biggest change in roster building in this next offseason.
You need to bring in Mike Pops Adams, and he makes two
Rodney
Pro
McLeod
Bowls.
for crying out loud. Yeah.
And Mike Mitchell even had a year or two here and then stayed on as coach after that. And Mitchell, like Kenny Moore, continues to talk about how influential Mike Mitchell was on him as a young defensive back in this league. And Mitchell's
Well, who did he? Was it Quincy Wilson? Who was it? When Mike Mitchell came here, he sort of helped that. I can't think of who. I think it was Wilson, but it helped him sort of elevate his play, which didn't last. But it's great to have guys you believe in and develop. That's how you build rosters is from within. But and one thing, just since this is defensively only, but the guys you're going to sign in free agency, that I hope 3 or 4 guys, these are not cornerstone players. They're not. They're guys that come in and help you for a year or two. It's Justin Houston. It's Ngakoue was a trade.
Mm-hmm.
But you just want a year or two from a guy, and if they give you more like Mike Adams did, I mean, what a find that was. So, but you need to do it both ways. You just can't be married to that one area of building a roster.
Mercenaries are not evil.
No. The league's full of them, and these guys have gone to a few of them, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that as long as the price is right.
Let's take a look at Anarumo and what he's done in Cincinnati. This past year, they were 25th in points allowed, 25th in yards allowed per game, 22nd in the NFL in pass yards allowed per game, 19th in rush yards allowed per game. They forced 25 turnovers. The number 25 keeps coming back up here for whatever reason. Tied for 6th best in the league, which was with the Colts, in fact, who also
and the Broncos
25, and the Broncos forced 25 turnovers this year. But anyway, the Bengals, like I said, 25th in points allowed. The Colts were 24th in points allowed. 25th in yards allowed. The Colts were 29th in yards allowed. Bengals were 22nd in pass yards allowed. Bengals were 26th. Colts were 26th in pass yards allowed, excuse me. Bengals 19th in rush yards allowed. Colts 23rd in rush yards allowed. This is not a significant, just in terms of this last year, Chap, upgrade from what was produced on the field to what the Colts are getting,
Right.
So,
and again, the stats, that's kind of what we have to work on.
Right. Yeah.
Over the last 3 years, with Gus Bradley and his defense, and whatever the personnel shortcomings were, they were like 30th or 29th in points allowed, and 26th against the run, and 25th against pass, and all that. They were like tied for 5th with sacks. They had 131 sacks. Cincinnati had like 110 sacks, with Hendrickson getting 35 by himself.
So he nearly had half their sacks last year,
right,
or this season.
But the differences are, I mean, you look to, I think Gus Bradley's the pass defense. I think they had a league high or close to the league high with like completion percentage. They could not get off the field.
No. Third down.
Right, and Cincinnati was like 63%. The Colts were like 67%. But all these numbers, all that's going to matter is it's kind of like with, we talked the last few weeks about Anthony Richardson and is it going to work and all this, and with Chris Ballard, will it work? We'll see. We'll find out, and that's what it is with this defense. Again, I think a change had to be made, and I like Gus a lot, but the defense, it wasn't working. The Giants game. I mean, my goodness, that's a stain that you just couldn't wash out. But whenever I've learned through the years that whenever they bring in coaches, this is different with a coordinator, but they bring in a receivers coach, and this guy really works on fundamentals and route running, and we always talk about that. And then the receiver corps sucks. Mm-hmm. So it's a results-driven league, and while the numbers aren't that much better with Anarumo. I'll get that right one of these days. But with his defense and Gus's and Lou's over 6 years are not great stuff to write home about. But in those 2 playoff years, they're pretty good. That one year they were tied for 5th, or was it in fewest points allowed.
Yep.
So that's what they hope for. But it's personnel, and I've seen people say, is this going to be a schematic change? And he's a 4-3 guy, and you just don't switch to 3-4,
right? No,
because you don't have the personnel for it, unless you're going to put Kwity Paye and Latu at outside linebacker, which I suppose you could. But so it's give him what you didn't give Gus. Give him a veteran corner, a veteran safety, because they're going to lose. But they're losing E.J. Speed. They're losing probably Julian Blackman. Juju Brents, you don't know. You don't know. So, but it'll be a nice breath of fresh air for now, and then we'll see.
I'll say this in the defense of kind of how his results in Cincinnati have gone over the years. He started off taking over a defense that was terrible. It was like 28th in the league, one of the worst scoring defenses, and then worked up to like top 15 for sure. And then, like you said, it was like 5th or 6th in the league in their run to the Super Bowl. And since then, it kind of dropped after that to more like the teens and 20s the last couple years. Here's what Cincinnati has done, though. Like, they have severely shifted their focus from spending money on
their
the
finances,
defense to spending money on offense. They needed to pay Jamar Chase. They needed to pay a quarterback by the name of Joe Burrow.
T. Higgins.
They franchised him for 1 year. I don't know if they're going to pay him again. But that's why Jesse Bates, their all-pro safety,
that's a real key for that defense,
is no longer on that team. He had him as a really good player on the back end during those Super Bowl runs.
Right, and they didn't want to pay him.
Exactly. And I understand why. Because the NFL has continually turned into an offensive league. But it just swung too far in one direction.
Changes your communication, changes your philosophy, and he's a highly skilled player on that defense.
And they have Trey Hendrickson at the front of the defense, getting 17.5 sacks per game. So they said, we can't lose him. But losing Bates is a big deal. And other guys in the past as well. But he's just the obvious one that comes to mind. So like when you shift your resources in the NFL from the defense to the offense, like then I understand why the defensive coordinator isn't giving you the same results.
Right.
So that's at least one way to explain how things have gone downhill in Cincinnati for Anarumo.
It's not been the case here, though. That's not why this defense hasn't lifted off. This team hasn't had those heavy expenses.
No, it is not. And really, it is very much invested in the defense. Like, it's paid to DeForest Buckner and
Grover Stewart
for 1 more year, and Grover Stewart multiple times,
and Zaire Franklin and Kenny Moore.
Yes, exactly. So they're paying their own. It's not the problem here.
Correct.
It was the problem, I believe, in part at least, for Anarumo out in Cincinnati. And I don't think that's a question I would
Jimmys
say,
and
right?
Joes, is that what you said?
It's about the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's.
Right. Give me the Jimmys and the Joes, and then I'll make it work.
Players, not plays, is what coaches say these days as well. But let's see. The Trey Hendrickson stat, like that you guys mentioned, they had 36 sacks as a team last year, and he had 17.5 of them. That's
crazy.
He's an insanely
monster
good player. And I remember. Yeah, go ahead.
That's like when you go into a game and you say, "This is the guy we have to stop."
That's it.
And he's got 17.5 sacks.
Still got 17.5.
Right.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. But like that also could give a Colts fan pause. Like, well, his scheme isn't generating that many sacks, other than their one all-star player. So. So we'll see what happens here. We'll see what he thinks of the guys here, what he thinks of Kwity Paye, who led the team with 8 sacks this year, what he thinks of Laiatu Latu, who had 4 sacks in his rookie year, and where he wants to shake things up, what he thinks of DeForest Buckner on the inside. It'll be
Samson Ebukam.
Ebukam, yeah, exactly. A guy that,
hopefully he'll be able to come back next year.
That would be fantastic as the guy who led the team 2 years ago.
But coming off an Achilles.
Yeah, gosh, just an awful injury.
As we have seen with multiple players.
Some guys come back from them very quickly, and some guys it just takes a year.
Julian Blackmon came back and was pretty good.
Eric Fisher?
Eric Fisher was not.
Yep.
Well, he was a good run blocker, but he couldn't pass protect.
Dallas Flowers unfortunately couldn't recover from it.
Shame.
Yeah, because he was such an explosive player.
Yep. Lost the explosion and really lost what made him so special. And so it's going to be Anarumo's job to help turn this defense around, and has been referred to as the mad scientist for his approach to defenses and his flexibility in his scheme as well, which I believe will intrigue Colts fans, because if there's one word that I would not use to describe Gus Bradley's approach to defense, flexibility probably isn't it. And he would there would be blitzes at times. There would be man coverage at times, but for the most part, the vast majority, and this goes for Matt Eberflus before him as well. So it's been years upon years of that soft zone shell coverage that you're trying to keep plays in front of you, eliminate the big play, and then try to get more big plays on offense. And that's been kind of the theme under Chris Ballard in the years that he's been the head coach here, whether it's been Frank Reich or Shane Steichen as head coach. It will be a change up, I anticipate, at least more so, switching things up on the defensive side of the ball, seeing more looks, showing more looks, and trying to trip up opposing offenses, Chapin, that way.
Yeah, I'm curious how like Kenny Moore fits in here because I think this could be he really thrived with Flus. He really did, and I'm kind of curious if I think that may be the same thing here. I don't, from what I've read, I don't get too deep in the weeds with this, but I don't get the impression that Lou has been that blitz crazy guy.
No,
but I have
he's
seen
not Steve Spagnuolo,
right,
who
but
does a
I've
lot
seen
with
things to where he gets a lot from that nickel corner, and Kenny was at his best when he was rushing occasionally, not frequently, and tackles for loss and some sacks. So, but again, you look at it, and that's why I'm really curious. His first order of business is going to be to sit down and evaluate what he's got, who he's got, and hopefully when he says, I like a lot of these parts, but we need this because again, you still need those parts. And I like a lot of these parts, but there's not a lot of there's no Trey Hendrickson's out there, the playmakers. But yeah, I think we're going to enjoy, at least initially, the creativity and doggone takeaway. If somebody's got somebody that you just know you can't let beat you, don't let him beat you. I'm watching the Ohio State game tonight with Notre Dame, and
don't let Jeremiah Smith beat you.
3rd and 11. The best player on the field would be the first pick in the draft.
He would be.
And
he's so stinking good.
He is. And you put, I don't care what the corner is, who the corner is, to do that. And that's what what people say is Lou's very good at molding his defense to fit whatever the quarterback or the passing game brings. And I remember one thing that Chris Ballard mentioned when we talked to him, was it 2 weeks ago, about being more aggressive, and he says you have to affect the quarterback. And when you're giving up 68% completion percentage, you're not affecting your quarterback, and you get sacks.
Yeah,
the 1 year with the 51 sacks was a franchise Indy record. But how many times did they just not get that pressure?
Yeah, there were a lot of 3rd and 9s,
right?
Where guy got downfield.
3rd and 19, I think C.J. Stroud had in a big game, and so that's the thing, is affect the quarterback, and if the sacks aren't there, this maybe there is something that, well, pressures are almost as good as sacks. I don't totally buy that. I just soon have some sacks.
Yeah,
but it's going to be really curious, and I think there will be sort of a honeymoon period, I guess. Although this is a very, very impatient fan base, and I think one of the reasons, I saw a couple of the names that they brought in to talk to. One of them was was it Cleveland safeties coach?
Yeah.
Banda?
Yeah. Ephraim. Yeah.
They were not. This is it's not 1 year or bust, but they had to bring in somebody with cachet who could get things done right away, because this isn't going to be, well, in 3 years this could be a good defense. No, the defense has got to be legit next year.
That's the goal and the expectation under him. And I want to continue your point about like affecting the quarterback and that being the defense's goal. Defenses do that multiple ways. Some just pressure. Spagnuolo is one, and a chief one in doing that. Another way to affect the quarterback is more mixing up coverages and playing a big mix between man and zone, or just different ways to play man, whether it's soft or press. But yeah, you look at what the Colts did in recent years, and playing a soft zone coverage is I think more attuned to letting quarterbacks start to get hot. How many times, and I wish I had looked this up before coming on, but how many times did we see a quarterback against the Colts like be 10 of 12, even if it's just for 83 yards, 10 of 12 for 83, it gets you in a groove.
Get you in rhythm and everything.
And these weren't always top-end quarterbacks.
Right.
They turned some of these backup quarterbacks in the last couple of years into all pros.
Yeah.
Drew Lock.
Yeah.
Tyler Heineke.
Jake Browning.
And then when elite quarterbacks come in, like you get torched. Absolutely torched. And it reminds me, actually, but before I came on today, the podcast, this Wednesday as we tape it, like I was listening to new Bears head coach Ben Johnson talking about some of his philosophies of there. And Ben Johnson, like the name of names in this head coaching cycle. Everybody wanted a piece of Ben Johnson and what he had been doing in Detroit. And Ben Johnson, what he said was that modern football in the NFL is quarterback driven. You can look at the analytics. QB success is a higher predictor of winning and losing than turnover ratio. So you look at quotes like that, and the goal of defense is to bust up what the quarterback is doing. Obviously, turnovers are part of quarterback success.
Sure, right.
Yes, but also not letting a quarterback go 13 of 15, because that's pretty successful against you. And if quarterbacks continue to have that success, they're going to pick you apart more often than not, because quarterbacks are too good against defenses that have more of the soft zone without pressures, without mixing it up. There has been a trend in that direction over the past decade, and maybe even over the past 5 years specifically in the NFL. So the defense's job has to be to just not let the quarterback have that type of success. And that is the metric that he says, that the guy who everybody in the league loves and everybody with a head coach opening wanted, that's what he thinks is the key to success in the NFL. So, like I said, defensive side of the ball, what does that tell you? That your defense needs to be able to affect the quarterback and keep him from having success. What does that tell you on the offensive side of the ball? Well, that your quarterback needs to be successful in order for you to win games.
The only pushback I'll give you,
Go ahead,
I haven't got the stats in front of me, but I did it for something else. The semifinal games in the NFL, it was the losing teams were a -10 in takeaway in turnovers, and you had Josh Allen throwing for 127.
Mm-hmm.
You had Hurts throwing for 177.
You're right.
And Lamar didn't throw for. Jaden Daniels threw for 299. I still think turnovers. I still think that's number one.
I think that's pretty important. I do.
But I understand what he's saying, and watching again the college football game. Is it Will Howard?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. He was like 12 or 12 or 13 for 13.
Super efficient.
Yep. It just, and it doesn't have to be for 200 yards like you said.
And it wasn't for him.
No, it wasn't. So, but affect the quarterback, yes. And again, I think that they're certainly, like you mentioned, they're tied together. If you don't get a sack, make him throw quicker. Mm-hmm. Get some tip balls. And we just didn't see enough of that. Again, I think it's maybe one of the most misguided stats are the 131 sacks the Colts had and the 51 they had, because it disguised the deficiencies you had, and it couldn't overcome. One concern I had with when I looked at Lou's stats from 6 years is they were seldom very good against the run, but except for the 2 years that they were in the playoffs.
They were top 5, I think.
Right, correct.
Those years.
So probably that goes hand in hand, and maybe we need to focus more on the 2 years that they were really good. And again, if your offense is the level it was in Cincy, you don't have to have a Bears defense. You need to be a top 15 and don't let people drive on you. And so, but again, I'm really curious. People have embraced him, I think, for the most part. Some people have been critical because he got fired in Cincinnati.
Well, right. How good could he be? He just got fired.
And a funny story is when the Colts hired, this was Jim Mora's hire in 1998. He hired Vic Fangio away from Carolina. Fired. I think it was Carolina fired him. And the Colts defense was like 29th, and Vic's defense in Carolina was like 30th.
Right.
And I wrote a story about the Colts, to improve their defense, they went from their 29th to the 30th. I got roasted by somebody at the Colts complex. How dare you? This is the stat. That's what you guys did.
Yeah.
And now Vic's got things really cooking. And Vic's kind of an older. They're totally different styles, but he's a perfect example. Is if you've got a reputation as a coordinator, somebody's going to find you, and you're always going to be there's going to be a demand for you. So again, I like the hire. I just want to know in September if this is working or not, and we'll know in September, October.
We certainly will. And we will know tomorrow as we tape this podcast a little bit more from Lou directly. From
It'll be a home run.
Right. No, yeah.
Won't it be? I mean,
yeah, I think so.
So
yeah, I mean, but if you want to hear some of what Lou had to say, you can log on to fox59.com, cbs4indy.com, see what Mike has to write after Anarumo speaks with the media on Thursday at 9 a.m. So continuing our coverage here over to there, and I'm sure we'll probably mention maybe one or two things next week here on the podcast that stick out to us about what he has to say, whether it's about his philosophies, the Colts personnel, his status looking forward, but yeah, all those things will be relevant topics, I'm sure, in what he has to say.
I really hope that with the urgency that this franchise has, that whether it's Steichen, I was going to say the offensive coordinator, I don't mean to dismiss Jim Bob, but with Steichen or the defensive coordinator, I hope if he goes to these guys and says, I need this. I need a tight end, which, my goodness, they need a tight end, or I need a corner. I need a safety. I just hope there's receptive ears with management that does that.
And I'll say this: it seemed like there was when Gus Bradley came here, and this is a point that other people have brought up. This is not an original point. That when Gus Bradley came here, the Colts went out and they got Yannick Ngakoue, who had been under Gus Bradley's systems before multiple times. And
they traded for him.
They did. They went out and actively pursued him.
Pierre Desir? Was that?
I think you're right.
Yeah, they sent Desir to the Raiders.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was. Was it Desir? Was it Desir?
Was it Rock Yassin?
Was it Rock Yassin?
Rock Yassin. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I knew it was.
I know it was a corner.
Yeah.
But that no, you did. They did that. So they've done it in the past, but the last year or two they just didn't.
Right, they did, and maybe there's a grace period here in year one. If you're bringing somebody in, you like, hey, I need a little bit more here to get this done.
And I tell you, if I'm this is I guess a fatalistic approach, but if I'm Chris Ballard, I'm going to be active. I'm going to be aggressive, and if that means backloading contracts to get somebody, I don't care.
Do it.
I don't care.
Do it. Yeah,
because
absolutely.
if it doesn't work this year, somebody else will worry about the second or third year.
They'll have to sort it out.
So again, I'm not saying just being stupid money, because teams do that and it often does not work. But give these guys, give Steichen, give Lou the people, and then if it doesn't work, you say, well, doggone it, at least we gave him the personnel.
Right.
And didn't work. So yeah, it's. But I'm curious. I think it'll be a really energetic press conference, and I'm just looking forward to talking with him.
And this is exactly what I said last week on the podcast chat when you weren't here, when it was Matt and I just chatting kind of more on the Anthony Richardson topic, which we'll turn to now, since there's a little bit of Richardson news this week. Is that like this has to be a year of like no excuses. Like, give him no excuses to be successful. Do what the Bills did for Josh Allen. Go out and get a Stephon Diggs. Do what the Eagles did for Jalen Hurts in year 3. Go out and get an A.J. Brown. Like, it has to be, you have to give him the best possible opportunity to succeed, because Chris Ballard's future rests on him succeeding. Shane Steichen's future rests on him succeeding. Like, there needs to be not just minor improvements.
Right.
Like the example that I gave Matt was at wide receiver. You can go get Nick Westbrook-Akine, who had, 7-8 touchdowns last year, had a pretty good year end to his year last year. But that's not a significant improvement to the receiving core. That is a piece. And that's what Chris Ballard has done in the past when he has dipped into either free agency or, for the most part, trades. I think the DeForest Buckner trade is an outlier, going to get a significant piece. But that's more what I think is necessary this offseason, making significant improvements around Anthony Richardson to make him better and to give him no excuses to success in this year 3.
Is that a receiver or is it a tight end?
Either, I think. And I think you could make an argument for either. But if it's a tight end, like you need a name that's not like there's just so few big playmakers.
I looked at the free agency list, and it's not going to be.
You would need to make a trade.
Zach Ertz is back out there.
No, he's how old is he now? 30.
He's a year older than when they didn't get him last year.
Exactly. So the playmaking tight ends out there. I mean, it's Kelsey, it's Kittle, Hawkinson.
Brock Bowers.
Like Bowers, exactly. Like they're just so few.
I
that are
think
big
the
name
I think the
playmaking
draft
tight
gives you the
ends.
tight end.
I think so too.
I
But
really do.
And so where does that leave you in terms of getting a big time playmaker? It's wide receiver there, and I like the wide receivers the Colts have. They're good players, and I know Pittman was limited this year with his back and not able to showcase his full abilities. I know that Alec Pierce had the best year of his career. I know Josh Downs is set now a record for receptions in the first 2 years of his career. I know
more than some Hall of Famer.
Right. I know that Adonai Mitchell, he can only go up from his rookie year. Well, unless he really goes down, which would be yeah, exactly.
That would be a major regression.
That's why I say he can only go up, or else he just won't play. That he'll be a damn healthy scratch for the rest of the year if that's the case. But like they're fine players, all of them. But how many of them are game wreckers? None.
But are you going to pay $30 million or more to get T. Higgins?
Do you want to give Anthony Richardson the best opportunity to succeed or not? Like
okay, you want to give Steichen and 30 I'm lowballing T. Higgins.
Yeah, exactly.
You might be.
Probably
nice
or would you rather give the defense $30 million for probably 3 positions?
You just spent so much on defense last offseason with Grover.
But God, I know, but you didn't address.
I know.
The 2 areas now. It's safety and corner.
Yep, you're right.
And boy, don't trick yourself into saying, if we just keep Juju on the field, you can't do that.
No, you can't.
You can't. Nope. And he's a great kid, and it's killed him to have these injuries. But you can't. He's got to be. If he's there, good for us.
Yeah.
But you can't plan on it.
Like he's the guy that you want to succeed because he's a great kid.
Right.
He's a good interview. Like he's from Indy. He loved the Colts growing up. I'll bet no one in that locker room was more excited to come to the Colts than him when he got the call. Everyone, Richardson maybe, because he's a 4th overall pick. But
and then they put him out there for the last game to get some snaps, and
then he's freaking hurt again.
And he plays 6 snaps or whatever.
Yeah,
so
awful.
And again, I don't think you don't bank on injuries.
No.
Going. I'm sure he's got that out of his system. No, that's like with Richardson, which we can get into. But
yes.
So yeah, this is going to be such a curious offseason, which will be on us really soon.
A crucial offseason for Anthony Richardson's development. He will not be rehabbing a shoulder injury, which is good news for him. He'll be able to do a full normal offseason in terms of NFL quarterbacks, whatever a normal offseason entails. According to ESPN's Stephen Holder, Richardson's offseason plans do involve work with known biometrics expert Chris Hess, who was instrumental in helping Josh Allen improve his accuracy as a young quarterback in the NFL. And we have all seen what Allen has grown into, being a MVP candidate year after year. And more than that, the Bills are a team. We talked about turnovers earlier. They do not turn the ball over. Like they have the fewest
8 turnovers in 19 games.
It's stupid low what their number is. Yeah.
What I was struck with, and it was just a snippet, but in that game with Baltimore, they're down by the goal line, and Allen keeps it, and he gets and he
thought about it.
He wanted to pitch that